Hello, everyone, and welcome back to TBR Media for another review. Today, we are going to be looking at Andrew Hayes' All of Us Strangers. This is a movie that really hits close to home for me, and I can say that on a deeply personal level, this movie did affect me in ways that were kind of surprising. And I think the performances from our two leads here, of course, Paul Mescal, but Andrew Scott, who really takes a moment to dive into the subtleties of grief and trauma and responsiveness. And I think that this is an exercise or a meditation on not only grief, but on happiness, on the creative process. So many levels this movie hits, and I was really surprised at how effective the storytelling and the narrative was here. So, for those of you who don't know what this movie is about, this follows Adam, who is a screenwriter, really just going through the motions day to day. There's a really interesting use of fades, and the editing technique of this movie really kind of blends the days into one another in a way that I thought was really effective for the kind of narrative. So while he is going through the motions of his day-to-day screenwriting process, he has a chance encounter with his neighbor Harry in kind of this empty London tower. In the outskirts of the city, it's kind of haunting because they're seemingly the only two people in this building. And so it's kind of a little off-putting, especially their first encounter. It's a little voyeuristic. There's a tendency of this movie to be a little bit creepy, but in such a soft way that I thought was really interesting for tone. And as their relationship kind of blossoms, they're opening up to each other more and more about their past. And that's really kind of where we get to know these characters. It's in these really intense, tender moments between one another that Adam and Harry are able to talk about life, talk about their past, talk about their upbringing. And it leads us to kind of glean where we might see ourselves in these characters in more of these soft, quiet moments. And as they start to kindle that relationship, Adam finds himself back in his childhood home with his parents who are seemingly the same as they were when they died 30 years ago. So, of course, this is a ghost story. This is a tale of apparitions, of not being able to let go of the past. And that is the aspect of this movie that I really was affected by as someone who is not straight and as someone who has lost both of their parents. This movie is working on multiple levels, not only showing a beautiful queer romance in a way that it's never almost been shot before. I mean, there have been things like it, of course, but the lighting in some of the more intimate scenes really do feel true to how it actually is in real life. And I couldn't shake that feeling of realness. And that's such an interesting way to feel in a movie about a bunch of ghosts. And so I think that Hay here did a really good job at making sure that the material feels tangible. It feels like it can be digested easily for a general audience. Even if you're not gay and your parents aren't dead, I feel like everyone has a mutual understanding of how effective this story can be and is. Playing Adam's parents, we also have Jamie Bell and Claire Foy, who do an exceptional job at kind of bridging between their reality of what they knew life was like in their time and what Adam is currently experiencing in the present day. And it's this beautiful tug of war between the past and present, and that's really what this movie is kind of attacking here. Time is erased, and as I mentioned earlier, the editing is a large part of that. And that's mostly, attributed to Jonathan Alberts there, who did the editing for All of Us Strangers. The music is so tender and haunting at times, and it beautifully bleeds into each different emotion that Adam is feeling at any given moment. And the frames that are constructed with such grace by Jamie Ramsey are also something that you just are stunned by in this movie. I think that the one area of critique that I may have with this is that I wanted to spend more time in kind of the tenderness, the turbulence that you feel on the inside in everyday life. And part of that is that kind of unconscious way that our brain just kind of erases entire days in our memory. And, as we go on in life, it just bleeds into one another, and you aren't sure whether or not you ate your dinner last night or if you haven't eaten for 4 days. And that's kind of what they're getting at with this movie. Nonetheless, I really wanted to spend more time in kind of those tender, more intimate moments between Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott, or Jamie Bell and Claire Foy as his parents. I think that is where this movie really elevates itself, is in the script and the dialogue that these characters all share with one another. But I really did enjoy this film. I think I've wanted to see something like this for so long, as someone who had to come out after both of my parents had passed away. And so this is a really touching story for me personally. And I like the balance between the horror aspects of what they're trying to do with this and the more delicate, tender moments that we get between all of the characters. But I want to know what you think. Let me know what you thought of All of Us Strangers if you've seen it. It's out in theaters right now. Let me know down in the comments below if you enjoyed it as much as I did. And as always, we'll see you in the next review.